Hello and welcome to the Tray Bakes and More Cooking channel. I've got another simple traditional recipe for you today. This is wheaten bread. So this is my wheaten bread recipe. It has a few tweaks, it has a few changes to maybe a traditional wheaten bread recipe. This is my sort of Ulster American wheaten bread recipe with molasses and maple syrup in there. But whatever it is quick, it is easy, it is my go-to. If I do not have anything in the house for lunch, then I can know that I can get this baked and ready very, very quickly to have alongside some soup or something like that. It is also great just sliced up and buttered or with some jam. And if you slice this thinly with some smoked salmon, a little squeeze of lemon juice and some black pepper, then it is delicious. Simple, straightforward, easy to make wheaten bread. Okay, before we talk about ingredients, I'm preheating my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 degrees Celsius or thereabouts in a conventional oven. And I've got a baking tray sitting off to one side. I freeform my loaf, I don't put it in a tin, so it just sits on a baking tray and goes in the oven when it is ready. And to get it ready, I have my ingredients. So I have plain flour, all-purpose flour here, and what I have here is a coarse wholemeal flour. This is like wheaten bread flour. It's got the bran in there, so it's a little bit, as I said, coarser. Regular whole wheat or regular wholemeal flour will work if you cannot get hold of this. There is a wonderful little shop in Brighton, Massachusetts, Kiki's Quick Mart in Brighton, Massachusetts. If you're ever nearby and you're craving some, chocolate or biscuits or some sort of crisps, they do potato crisps, the proper potatoes from Tandragee. So, it's dangerous going there, but it's also wonderful because I can get things like this. If you can't, as I said, if you can't get hold of the coarse wholemeal flour, regular wholemeal whole wheat flour will work. If you can get some wheat bran as well, a little spoonful of that will help to recreate the texture of a wholemeal flour, but it's still going to taste good. So anyway, I have my flour in here. To that, I'm going to add some baking soda, bicarbonate of soda, and some salt. And those are the dry ingredients. Mix that thoroughly so it's all incorporated, nicely distributed throughout. Make a little well in the center, and then we're going to mix through the dry ingredients. The main one of which is buttermilk. And then in this little bowl, I have my recipe has evolved over time, my wheaten bread recipe. You'll see lots of variations out there. So mine has got a slight New England twist to it. So I've got a little bit of oil in there, but then I also have molasses and some maple syrup, both quite traditional over here in the Boston area. If you can't get molasses, use black treacle. And if you cannot get maple syrup, then some honey or some golden syrup will also work brilliantly. The molasses just makes it a little bit darker and stickier, and the maple syrup just gives a little bit of sweetness as well, which is wonderful. Buttermilk, if you can get it. There are various buttermilk substitutes that you see sort of ideas circulating on the internet, like using some lemon juice in some milk or using some natural yogurt that you've thinned down a bit. I have used both of those in the past and they do work, but buttermilk is the easiest and the quickest and the best. So, dry ingredients, wet ingredients. Add about 3/4 of your buttermilk at the start. Don't add it all at once just in case. Some days it takes more, some days it takes less. It is always easier to add more liquid than it is to try and add more flour to your mixture. But here we go. Let's get baking. Right, as you can see, I got in there with my hands at the end. It actually is really useful just to get a feel for the mixture here and just how wet or how dry it is. And this is pretty good. It's a little bit sticky in my fingers there. You can feel that. Because we're gonna put a little bit of flour on your work surface just to shape it as well. You don't want it too dry at this stage. But you don't want it too wet either. It's one of those things that comes with time. As you make this more often, you will get a feel for just how wet or how dry your mixture is. But this is good, it's holding its shape nicely. This is exactly the way I want it. You can see I didn't quite use all of my buttermilk. That's all right, that's good. I'm gonna brush a little bit over the top anyway, just before it goes in the oven. But here we go, I'm gonna turn this out, flour my work surface, turn this out, just shape it one more time and then transfer it onto the baking tray. Right, so this pretty much ended up the shape that I want it. You don't need to knead this, you can knead it a little bit. I mean, don't overwork it, but you can knead it a little bit to pull it into shape, just to sort of bring it together. You want this in a nice little round. It's about, 6 inches, 15 centimeters across, something like that. A little bit of height to it. And then all I'm going to do is to cut 2 cuts horizontally and vertically. If you see my fruit soda recipe, then I do this very similar thing with that. So just 2 cuts. I use my little bench scraper for that. Works very well to do some nice clean cuts in that. And then, totally optional, but what I like to do with my wheaten bread is to sprinkle just a little bit of, you know, oats and things on the top. So I have some steel cut oats, some regular oats, and a little bit of flaxseed in there. I'm just going to brush some buttermilk over the top of this and then press these into the top of my wheaten bread. Then into the oven for 30 minutes or so. Right, you want to do a fairly deep cut on this, okay? And then off to the side I have some of the buttermilk that didn't go into it. This just helps it to stick. Right, so I've just cut my slits, brushed a little bit of buttermilk over the top, and then I'm going to sprinkle these over. So there you go. I'm just going to transfer this to my baking tray, pop it in the oven for about 30 minutes. Like with any bread, you tap the bottom, and if it sounds hollow, it's good. You can also see, it's also a very good indicator with these slits, you can see into the bread then, because this will expand and open up as it is baking. So you can see if there are any bits that look like they're still a little bit undercooked in there. Well, there we have it, into the oven with my wheaten bread. Here we go, fresh out of the oven, smelling delicious, looking baked. You can see quite deep cuts there, open up quite a lot. This is the way that I like to make my wheaten bread. You know, if you don't want yours to expand just as much, you can maybe do a little smaller cuts and stuff, but I like it like this. Anyway, you can see in there as well, if it looks undercooked, underbaked in there, then it's a good indicator that it needs to go back in the oven, but this is fine. Smells delicious. Onto a wire rack to cool. Try and resist the temptation for a little bit, maybe half an hour or so before you cut into this. Just let it sit and firm and cool before you cut it, slice it, butter it. Delicious. Slightly untraditional Ulster American wheaten bread. So keep an eye out for more recipes, subscribe to my channel, tell your family and friends, and I'll see you again soon on Traybakes and more.